Welcome back to the Athlete Lab podcast, where we are obsessed with everything that moves the needle in athlete development. And today we're very fortunate to be joined by Kim Muir. Kim Muir is one of the leaders in the power skating and skating development industry. She has coached everyone from very beginners all the way up to the pros, and she teaches not just speed, but efficiency and movement. So we're really, really excited to have Kim here. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Phil.
So before we get started on like all your story, which is extraordinary, I want to when people hear Kim Muir skating, what do you want them to think immediately?
I think immediately that they know that one, they're seeing Kim Muir, right? Because so often you go to these camps and the name's attached, but you never see the owner. And two, the branding of whether it's myself or my staff or my style is very hands-on, physical, and personal.
Yeah, and that's something that when I watch you coach and you coach the little kids one-on-one or a camp where there's 40 kids or 30 kids on the ice and you're hands-on, you're coaching, the kids are getting stronger, you can see it and you can see it over the consistency. So it's really, that's really good. You can tell that you put your own personal, like all your passion into it.
Thank you, Phil.
So take us through your story. You have such a unique upbringing. So can you kind of take us right from the beginning and how you ended up in this type of role?
Yeah, you know, I say I got lucky. Maybe somebody else wouldn't think so, but I was found in the streets when I was 6 months old next to a trash can and with no name tag, no identification, right? And I got lucky that a police officer found me next to the trash can, not in it. And then they took me to the hospital to make sure I was healthy, okay, and no one claimed me. So I lived in an orphanage in South Korea, or Seoul, Korea, for the first 4 years of my life, and got blessed and lucky that these American or Scottish American parents wanted a girl. They were in their 40s, and here I came along, and the only thing they got was a picture of a person with a case number, and that happened to be me. And I came to Trenton, Michigan, where I had two brothers that were 10 and 12 years older than I. And when I came here, walking into a house with a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old male, or boys, and then my dad was almost 6 foot as well. And never seen men the whole time in the orphanage. It was overwhelming. And then same thing with dogs. I never saw a dog, and back then, I'm not sure if it's still now, but they ate dogs. So it was just one of these things. You never saw a dog, you never saw men in the orphanage. It was little women taking care of you. So I was petrified. And for the first 3 months of my life over in the United States is a language barrier. They didn't know what I was saying. I couldn't communicate to them. It was basically pointing and grunts and crying or to get communication across, right? And I don't even remember the day that it flipped, that I went from speaking Korean to them to now speaking English, but it happened, right? And my dad used to hint to my mom, like, if she's not going to accept us, we're going to have to figure something out, or might have to ship her back, which my mom's like, are you kidding me? So, but I think my dad, being old school and hegemonic, like in his mind, like, it's supposed to, we adopted her, therefore she's supposed to love us, right? And love isn't come overnight, right? And so one day they took me to the zoo, and they must have known I had a love affair for animals. And my dad took me to the most expensive restaurant in the area, and for whatever reason, I went over to my dad and hugged him for the first time, and he knew then I was going to be an expensive child, and I'm sure he still wished it. I was afraid of men. And then fast forward now, I have 3 big dogs. My smallest dog is 80 pounds of the 3. My biggest is 110. And the nature of my job is mostly male dominated, right? So there we are, right? Got through that. And then my dad was the, president and one of the original people who put the Trenton Hockey Association together. So with that, my home environment was all things hockey. And when you have all things hockey, the verbiage at the kitchen table, well, the vernacular is all things hockey, right? So I thought I was supposed to play hockey. And my dad, being very traditional, like I said, it was like, no, little girls go figure skate and hockey players, or boys play hockey. And then back then, there weren't the women's teams, and especially the pro level. And he must have known it was a dead end for me if I went to go play ice hockey. Where could I take it, right? And so in hindsight, I believe I'm truly a performer, that I wouldn't have this life if I wasn't the figure skater, right? And so just been blessed and fortunate that I love to skate. I did well with it. So many athletes like myself, so close but still so far. But I think I've always had a knack to teach. And so whether it's to teach figure skating, teach hockey players, whether I'm golfing and I see someone with their swing off, I can't help myself sometimes, where I have to like get in there and like try this, but it's just all sports are mechanical physics. My background's in medicine, lots of years of schooling in science. And so it's really, I think, innately in me that with my academic background and then my professional or physical experience in skating, you have to be body aware that it ties in together when I teach.
And that's something that I've noticed, like you really are great at teaching the efficiency of skating. And hockey is a wildly inefficient sport because of the nature, you're getting bumped, you have to change directions so often. So how do you teach that? How much do you do off the ice? Is it all on the ice? And what are some of the key things that you do to teach it?
So it's all on the ice with synergistically hoping that the student goes and gets off-ice training with doing plyometrics and obviously mobility and all that. It all has to tie together. You can't just do one or the other, right? Because there's off-ice, there's a laws of physics, and there's an on-ice laws of physics that are completely different of how you move your body, right? But to get force, to get momentum and speed, it's all applied the same way and stuff. So when I'm on the ice, as you talked about, I'm very physical of showing them the timing of when to shift their body weight, what to move first to get the most power, and power turns into speed, right? Off the ice, it's really talking to the strength coaches and hoping that it mirrors what I'm doing on the ice.
So when you're talking the power turns into speed, that philosophy makes sense.
Yes.
So when you're saying you want a powerful stride, that'll make you innately faster.
Right. But how do you get power?
Exactly.
Okay, so this is where I get so excited about that. So this is where the laws of physics come in. If you're not taught off the ice or on the ice, and regardless of what sport you do, where potential energy is and how it turns into kinetic energy, then you'll never learn what power is or how to get power. So when you think of roller coasters, they go up and down, right? Potential energy is anything up top. And from the top, when it starts moving, it turns into kinetic energy. The higher something is, when you have gravity, and gravity's your friend, minus us parents that are aging, right? But gravity's your friend when you're moving, right? If you don't let gravity work its forces and start at the top and let it start moving to down, so the downward push into a stride. If they start in a down and try to push, you never created any potential kinetic energy. So now it's work. Now you're inefficient because you're going to be off the ice sooner than the next person because your legs are burnt out. And that's where the momentum and power come from, right? Start at the top, let it fall down, and it's a continuous up and down movement like roller coasters work, or like a pendulum of a swing, right? That's where the figure skaters are taught technically how to skate. Hockey players, it's almost assumed that they should know how to skate. But if they've never been taught the mechanical physics that I teach on the ice, or if they don't know, the instructor doesn't know the laws of physics, you're going to see the same repetition over and over, and that's what makes us different, because I teach mechanical physics on the ice.
That's incredible. That concept of you go up and then down to gain that power and keep their momentum, that really makes a lot of sense.
And to get the glide.
Right, because that's the separator is the guy is players who have an easy glide.
Yes.
And it's like how do they glide that fast?
Right.
And
there had to be a starting point.
Exactly. There had to be a starting point. So something I'm always fascinated with, you see in my previous roles watching players for the NHL. So we're watching players at 17, and then what are they going to look like?
Right.
And the ones whose skating mechanics aren't great.
Yes.
And it's like, all right, can you fix it?
Yes.
So I'll start with that.
Okay.
Like, 17-year-old knock-kneed skater who isn't strong enough, and then can you fix that type of skater?
But it takes more time for them than it would someone that did it when they were younger, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would be the first step? Because I think that's something we see is the kids that wildly inefficient.
Right.
And so what would be the first thing
so the first thing, not just even on the ice, is the posturing, right? Like, maybe we'll touch base on this a little bit more later, but like my son is autistic, and autistic kids are stiff and rigid, right? I put them in gymnastics because it's like pound for pound, those athletes are probably the strongest and most limber. But when you say strongest, it's because they use their full range of motion, whether it's their legs or their arms, to do whatever technical skills that they're doing. They're on their flips, on their bars, on their, like the men's on the rings, right? They're using the full body. You never see any retraction, right? And so number one thing is just teaching kids like the range of motion that they can get, a posturing. But that's also what I would feel like if a kid was knock-kneed, they should have gone to see a physical therapist a long time ago, because now it's impinging their hips, their knees, their ankle joints, and most likely they're probably pronated with their feet and stuff, you know. So it would, again, with any student, I would say go to off ice, make sure your strength coach is really working on the strength training of opening up your hips, the opening up the cavity, posture, everything, because the more range of motion, the more power. For the same reason, the less bend in the knee, the less range of motion for the push, right?
We've tried to talk to a range of people about athlete development, and posture comes up so often in different realms, which is really, it's unique to hear that come from you, because when you see a skater, and sometimes I think a lot of coaches, we're all guilty of, like, I don't know why that kid's so fast, but that kid's really fast, or she's really, really good at changing direction. So what's the ideal age, and how does that, where you really start to hone in on it and get kids, because we want them to love the sport.
Right.
And when can they understand this is how you create power?
Right. I think most of them start understanding it at about 9, 10 years old, if they've already been skating for a bit. So that caveat is if they've been skating for a bit. If not, like when you see us with our 6, 7, 8-year-olds, our Mike group, we are physically almost moving their bodies for them to get into a rhythm. Then comes squirts and peewees. It's really I would say cerebral part of it, really getting them to understand how does their body move. And then, because my background's in medicine, I put all my students in an experiment, because like every scientist, in order for theories to evolve, in order for the laws of theories to evolve, there had to be an experiment. Until they feel what that experiment feels like, the way they were doing it versus applying the laws of physics and what I'm teaching, then they're not going to correct it. Until they feel the self-correction, they're not going to fix the correction. And so that's where our style is different, right? So whether they're knock-kneed, whether they've never worked with skating before on the efficiency, or whether they're a 17-year-old that's never worked with skating, starting from the raw is probably like the best, but they're going to have to do it more often. Starting at 7, 8 years old, just getting their skating going, and then talking about it along the way, they're going to be further ahead, because as your skating improve, so does your stick handling, balance, and shooting. And then every coach is happy that they don't have to work on posture, because now you have more range of motion to shoot, more range of motion to stick handle and be creative. And so then as your feet improve, you can be creative with your feet, and hopefully your hands match your feet, right? And at the highest level of the game, it's all about creativity.
And when you had that good posture and you're powerful in your skating, your balance is better. You're going to win more puck battles. The game is going to be easier, 100%. which is more fun.
Yeah.
I love your tagline, can't skate, can't play, because it's like, that's very, very true. You know, like, it's a very unique player who isn't a good skater that is an effective player. So also, this is something near and dear to my heart. I think people always think skating is for forwards and defensemen, but I know you work with goalies, and talking through some of that stuff and what you've seen and translating success with what you do with goalies.
It's honestly, it's been my new baby. I love it. About 2013, or maybe it was in 2010, I started working with the Hurricanes, Carolina Hurricanes. At the same time, I was working with the Red Wings. I never worked with the goalies at the Red Wings, but when I stepped on the ice with the Hurricanes, immediately their goalies and the goalie coaches said, my goalies really want to work on skating. And I'm like, all right, send me some videos so ahead of time I could be prepared. And just watching them skate, even in their small crease your zone when you think of the other 5 players go end to end, right? And just watching the pushes, whether it's quick movements or going post to post, it's just all those little things. And then you're watching pros like Martin Brodeur, and they're leaving the net and they're playing the puck, and it was just like the evolution of the goalie is not just staying in the net, is being the third defenseman. And I think every team, every coach, and every defenseman loves when their goalie consistently can make an outlet pass out of the zone, and especially on a PP, why not? Right? And especially the guarantee on a PK that they're just going to send it out of the zone. Why not? Right? And so it's been probably the last 15 years really watching video to video, spending more time with goalies, and having been blessed with 8 years with the Hurricanes, working with their goalies, whether the AHL goalies or the NHL goalies, and really see how they move. And again, I think I've been blessed with being any figure skater, high-end figure skater, gymnast, dancers. We are all body self-aware of what we're doing and not doing, right? And so I can see the details of if they're pushing from the ball to foot, middle of the blade, or heel. I can see when they're not getting the full extensions, or just where their body weight is at, right? And so making sure that the goalies are never too far forward or never too far on their heels, right? That they're always in a position where they can quick T-push or quick slide, right? So again, it's been my baby. And then while I started with the Hurricanes, I got this little boy, Trey Augustine, and he was deciding he wanted to be a goalie. And he kind of knew all the while that he wanted to be a goalie, but his parents were very strict about, you need to learn how to skate first before you put all the equipment on and be committed to that position, and just got very fortunate. It sometimes just fell in my lap. I'm grateful that they chose me, and along the way, got to really try and test out my drills with Trey. And here we are, and look at him, first pick for the Red Wings 2023, right? Doing great things with Michigan State in the World Juniors. And then along the way, convincing other goalies to try my style. And now we're probably up to 35 goalies.
Yeah, and
it's the thing that people don't want to work on is skating, let alone goalies, right? But we do so much with skating with the puck, skating stick handling, and getting the puck out of your zone with every goalie. So I think that's the new trend and hope, right?
Exactly. Before we move on to forwards and defensemen, I'd share a story about Trey. So he was at his second NHL development camp, and there was 2 goalies that were invite goalies that were there, and Trey was doing goalie skating, and both of them said, they looked at me and like, I could watch this kid skate all day. It was like they're there competing, and they turn into fans of Trey. Like, as good of a skater he was, the posture, and that's all. So hearing that, it doesn't surprise me at all. Like, he put in the work when he's younger. And for those listeners who don't know, he's probably arguably the best goalie outside of the NHL now, and he's the goalie in waiting. He's one of the goalies in waiting for the Red Wings. So forwards and defensemen. You get, let's say, I'm going to give you a scenario of 14-year-olds. You have 2 14-year-olds that are going to come to you. One's a forward, one's a defenseman. Are you training them different? Is there different things that forwards should be working on versus D, or is it all the efficiency and the power?
All the efficiency and power, and then more than anything, my motto is to make yourself as marketable as you can. So you need to learn every position. And when you get into, like, a forward will tell me sometimes, well, I don't need to skate backward in the game. Well, when you're doing transitions, you need to learn how to skate backwards. For that split moment that you're backward, you need to do it well, So, and then adversely, my defensemen are usually my better skaters because the play is always in front of them, right? And they're forced to skate backwards more often than the offensive player. But I still stress to my offensive players, you need to be able to skate backwards well to make transition. The game is no longer linear, right? And
that's great advice for them, because if they are able to, you're not skating backwards often, but you're on the penalty kill, and you need to be able to transition fast, and you want to be a good enough skater to play in whatever role that the coach might need you. I've heard Don Granado talk and to a bunch of the NTDP players, and they're like, all right, how many people are centers? And they all raise their hand, and then he shows a lineup of an NHL team. Is like, which center are you beating out? And they're all kind of like, how many of you are wingers? And they're like, okay, maybe I have to be a winger.
Yes.
You know, and like that, that's all part of it.
Exactly.
So that's great advice. That leads me to another question. So as a skating coach who you work with programs, but maybe not on a staff, like how do you work with coaches to make sure that when you work with a player and then they go to their team practice, that it kind of goes and like consistency builds?
Yes.
What are your tactics?
So that is a very good question, because it's something I would love to touch base on with most organizations I work with, is that the coaches tend to get off the ice when I get on the ice. They never see what I do, other than they hear the reputation of what I do. And when I go to Alaska, this is what they do differently, is they make it mandatory that all the coaches go on with the ice with me. So they physically have to go through it. And also I allow them and any coach videotape my sessions, because you want to see what it is I'm teaching. And if I'm not around, that you can go back to, hey, this kid has short, choppy strides. You're seeing what we're working with, and right. And just to, one, it's cheaper. You've already paid for me to be there, so take that as a tool in your toolbox, right? And two, if they understand the ultimate goal and where it goes from day 1 to day 5, because anything in life is, there's a hierarchy of learning. You have to crawl before you walk, right? And then you walk, and then you skate, then you know what I mean? Then let's add the puck work, right? And so there's so many dynamics to when people come and skate with me. You're not just skating. You're skating with the puck. You're skating past. You're skating, shooting. There's body contact. If we never have them skate with the puck, though, I'm teaching you to be a figure skater. Right? And so that's the difference, is that the coaches need to see where the hierarchy of every drill goes to. If our drills don't have a purpose for your game, I wasted your time and money.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Some of the best coaches I hear they talk about technical skill, tactical skill, and then transferable.
Yes.
And if it's not transferable, what does it?
Exactly. And if you never practice transferable, then it's not practical.
And you gave insight there where you said, I'm going to work with these players. I need to see video of them.
Yeah.
And that's saying, all right, this is what they're trying to get better at.
Yes.
You notice you got the 91 from Sergei Fedorov. So those of us, those of us who remember watching Sergei skate, what a great example of someone who played those different positions. It's wild. You know, there's a time where they put him on defense all of a sudden.
Right. Well, I really feel like the European, when Sergei came over, the European scope of, they're just better skaters over there. I'm not sure if it's because they're on Olympic sheets, there's more to skate, or do they care about the craft of skating for the game more? It could be both or one, or you know what I mean? And I feel like Paul Coffey was one of the original that really showcased the importance of being a great skater for the game.
He was I feel like it'd be like the goalies watching Trey. What a beautiful skater watching Paul Coffey skate. Like, he's just incredible. One of the things I would say, when you touched on it a little bit, and you need both, was the Europeans, they do off ice more consistently. You go to watch a Finnish 10-year-old practice, they did off ice before. Not sometimes, not once a week.
Right.
It's every week.
Yeah.
So they're stronger, they're able to be more efficient.
Right.
So it's probably easier then for the coaches. You know, you're gonna help a stronger athlete become a better skater faster.
Right. And they're already stronger, to your point, the consistency in anything in life. The consistency is your best gift that you can give yourself, because if you, and then because you're consistently practicing over and over to get better, and it may be just baby steps better, but incrementally, at the end of the day, you're more prepared in life, whether on the metaphoric side of it or in the physical game of it. You're just more confident because you've done it over and over, that you know you can do that technical drill or that task, right?
Right. Something you and I have talked about is the consistency throughout the season. So oftentimes you take the off season, you're trying to get better X, Y, Z, and then the season gets here. And okay, now I'm going to see if I did that.
Right.
And that's 9 months sometimes.
Yes.
And we've talked about that in-season consistency. What would be a really good cadence for a driven youth athlete, a youth hockey player, boy or girl? What would be a good cadence throughout the season to kind of dedicate to really focused on skating?
At least minimally once a week with their own private skating coach, you know what I mean? Because they're going to have probably 3 practices a week, right? And then they're probably doing a game. So maybe they're on the ice 4 days a week. You want the 5th one just to be consistent skating, you know?
Yeah. And that once a week.
Once a week at least, minimum once a week. The ones that are the ones that really need extra work, the ones that are, whether they're not need or came later or started later in the technical terms of working on their skating, then they should go twice a week, if they really want to see improvement. But anything in life, you don't get better if you don't practice, right? And when you think of like figure skaters and gymnasts, I was on the ice 6 hours a day, 6 days a week when I was competing 30-some years ago, right? My daughter is a USA level gymnast, 25 hours a week. And when you look at these hockey players, an hour and a half, and parents say, oh, they're burned out. Okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't have that same logic, because it's like, in order for us to get better, we had to incrementally make ourselves better, but do it consistently day after day after day. Watching Ilya, right, quad god, getting to get that quad axle because he skated a couple hours a day or maybe 3 days a week. Doesn't happen.
Right. And that's another thing that's a reoccurring. There's no real secrets.
No.
Like someone who's great at teaching the game, but there's no secrets in how do you get great.
No.
You work at it.
You work at it.
You do the right thing all the time, over and over and over, and you're patient.
Yes, and that's the thing. Do it the right way.
Do it the right way, exactly. One of the many things I really admire about you is how you're very much open, like hockey's for everyone. You're always trying to, you shared your backstory, so very unique to be a hockey person at the level you are now with your backstory. Although when you said Trenton, I grew up, those Trenton teams were good. I played for Livonia. Boy, it was tougher. When you're driving down 75, you knew you were in one. But what are some of the things you do to make sure that more people do know? We have some barriers to our game that we're all trying to break down. But what are some of the things you do to try to expose the sport or just get more kids on the ice? Yeah,
so I'm on the board for the PCS Penguins, which is Plymouth Salem Canton high school team. I don't have a daughter that plays hockey, but just trying to really promote girls hockey, because I think we're up to about 25 teams in the state of Michigan, which is huge, compared to the boys side, but at least we're getting it going, right? And I've been with PCS, I would say, since 2000, so it's kind of something that I'm very proud of, that when it first started, I was part of it, and I'm still part of it, right? 25, 26 years later. So there's that avenue of it. There's a special needs side of it, having gone through my journey with my son who's special needs. And if he wouldn't have skated with me, I don't think he'd be this far along in being able to play on a varsity hockey team. Now, granted, caliber-wise, he doesn't deserve to be on the team. He's just a role player. But skates good enough to be in the game, but just a role, like he'll fist bump the kids on the other team because he's just so likable. He doesn't know he's supposed to go after that puck and put the puck in the net, but he just wants, hey, you're my friend, you're my friend. So when you look at that, and then you kind of, it's a reset or a calibrator of life, right? This game is supposed to be fun. It's about making friends and just enjoying it. My son is the epitome of enjoying the game. He loves the game. He loves the people. And I think he inspires me to make sure that I do that for anybody I encounter. So whether you're special needs, whether you're female or male, you're just an athlete, I'm going to treat you just as an athlete, not any other way.
Right. And the game there's so much the game can give you.
Oh, yes.
And it is for everybody. Yes. And it's so fun to hear that. It's great that he's fist bumping everybody. Yes. That's awesome. Yes. I'm fortunate enough to coach a group of 10-year-old 10U girls. Mm-hmm. And I've been around hockey my whole life. It's my favorite part I've ever been a part of, is watching those kids and their smiles and how they all love it. We got to play we played in the scrimmage, and they got to play in first overtime. Okay. Just the idea of playing in overtime, they all celebrated. I was like, this is awesome. Yes. It's like euphoric, and that's
100%. And the girls, the girls' hockey culture is so different than the boys, right? They're cheering each other on. I love it. It's like going to a softball game. They're all in, right? You don't hear that on the bench with the boys like you do with the girls, right?
Yeah.
So
it's it's like keeping that love for the game. That's almost the biggest challenge for every parent. Mm-hmm. If your child loves a sport, right? We're talking hockey now, but your child loves a sport. Your job is to make sure they still love it.
Yes.
because you want them to love it when they're our age.
Yes.
So they want to coach. It's not about these short little windows. You know, it's about like, how do you make sure your kids are still loving it? And you do that. And one of the things I love watching you is you have all these instructors on the ice that were your former students. And you can tell that they love being out there, and that comes across to the kids that are there. So how do you maintain that much buy-in? It's fun. It's really fun. The Christmas camp, all this.
Right. Oh, I know. Right. Honestly, like obviously when I first started doing this, it was me, myself, and I, and then I branched out to getting about 4 coaches, former students that became coaches that would stay with me, and then it was like, I still didn't feel like I got through enough drills. And then when we really started honing into skating the drill without the puck, with the puck game like situation immediately, I needed to have more staffing, and so it's just been blessed to handpick my coaches and blessed to also have a waiting list of people that want a job. And it gives me, like being on the ice with them, I already have an intrapersonal relationship to figure out, do they have leadership skills or not? And if their parents are calling me to get them a job, you're not going to ever skate. You're not going to be working for me. Well, that's one. Number 2, the style that we teach, if you're not going to get in there in the nitty gritty and stop, correct, fix every student, know every student's name like I do, then you're not going to work for me, because the brand is very personal. You're going to stop and correct every kid because customers are paying for us to do that, right? It's a service. My brand is a service, right? And it's not just the technical side, it's the other side. The other thing too is that if I see a young man, I'm just going to say more than men, a young man of mine, a staff member that does not hold the door, carry a bag in for somebody, it's going to be something that I have a discussion that they may not be working for me again. The brand has a standard, and I set the standard, and if they can't live up to what my expectation and standard is as a human being, then you don't get to work for me.
I started saying that, like, here we're obsessed with athlete development, and you're saying you're obsessed with not only athlete development but developing young people, which is awesome, because those are real lessons that'll stick with them long after. Well, hopefully they're never done skating, but long after they're done playing. So that's really, really cool, and you can tell that you exude all these things, and it's wonderful. So we really appreciate you sharing all your story, and love working with you and watching all the things you do.
Thank you so much. I really think my son Vinny has taught me the most life lessons, because when I first started teaching, I didn't teach mites because I thought they were too young, and I didn't want to be bothered with this, to say it that way, right? I just felt like, nah, they're not going to catch on. Well, I guess in my persona, I thought, like, I'm the AP Calc teacher. Why do I want to teach basic math? Let someone else do it. And then you get a kid like my son and, like, relearning how to teach from the rawest point, right? And that's just the technical skating. But my son, who's now 18, just turned 18 last week, my journey with him on the personal scope of it is the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs of him being rejected, being kicked off a team because the coach didn't know how to handle him. Other peers bullying him in middle school, which middle school kids are the worst, right? And at the end of the day, what do I want for my son and what do I want for my daughter? How do I want them to be? Just because he's special needs, he doesn't get a pass on etiquette, on manners and all that stuff. And so from, I would say, 5th grade, 6th grade, when the bullying or the dismissal from another coach, I realized that my most important mission in life is not teaching skating, is teaching people how to be better people. And if I can lead that, then that's my job.
That's awesome. That is really, really cool. And
thank you.
And the concept of being like the AP coach and not wanting to teach it, I think it's so great. I think a lot of coaches get caught up in that. They reach a certain level and they think that they only want to work with a certain player, but like that's and very humbling to be like, nope, shame on me to ever think that. I'm here for everybody and I can teach anybody. If I'm a good teacher, I can teach anybody. Right. I know 2018 was a wildly pivotal year for you. Can you walk us through all the different things that kind of came together?
Yes. When I found out that the Olympics was going to be in Korea, I decided at that point, because prior to it, I'd never cared about going back to find my parents or anything like that, or thought of even going to Korea ever. But that I had 5 students that were going to be in the Olympics representing their respective countries. And I'm like, this is a good time to go to Korea. And then I contacted the orphanage, well, actually the adoption agency, and they contacted the orphanage and then had to get government clearance to go, because you can't just show up to an orphanage if you don't have a purpose to adopt a child from the orphanage. And so while I was there, I was able to, they opened up my vault, and that's when they told me that I was found on the street by whom? The police officer. And then one of the caretakers who was in the orphanage taking care of me was still at the orphanage, and I got to meet her. At the same time, thank God for technology, I got to FaceTime my parents, who were in their late 80s at the time that I went, and be able to FaceTime them and go through the whole experience with them. And I took my 2 children. At that time, my son was 8 and my daughter was 6. They were too young to really understand the paradigm of what was going on. And I know I've said that my son's special needs. We were there when a 12-year-old girl was getting, I guess, disowned from her family or given up for adoption because she had facial deformities. And even though South Korea is not a communist country, you felt the intensity of competitiveness. So if you're not the top 10 percentile in academics and athletics, you are put to the wayside. If you have something that's a disability or deformity, you are disowned from the culture or from the families. And you think about your own family, when you're 12 years old, you know your whole extended grandparents, cousins, and all that stuff. And I'm standing there in that moment thinking, oh my gosh, like, this is my son. I would have been, if I lived in Korea, expected to give him up. And there's no way without it that I could fathom this. And in wishing, I was a single parent, still am, but I should have taken that child with me and got a cosmetic surgery and just like the life. And then since then, it's just been gratitude for my life, right? But as I say that, it was a yin and the yang of personal with professional. So every day I was either in Seoul, where I was at the orphanage or at the adoption agency, or the next day I was in Pyeongchang to see an Olympic venue and see one of my students. And one of the days the U.S. team was there, and it goes into overtime. Megan got a penalty. Megan Keller gets a penalty in overtime. I'm standing there next to her mom, which she's like a nervous wreck. And then it goes to a shootout, and the U.S. wins their first gold medal in women's hockey. And what an incredible moment professionally to be there with a parent of a child, an adult child now, right, who had been working with her and her brother Ryan when they grew up here in Farmington Hills. And just so surreal that I could be there in the moment with the first gold medal. And then fast forward just a couple weeks ago to watch it, I was, and see her and, be the golden girl and win it again for the U.S. team is just unbelievable. Really, the success of my job or my business is the relationship, not the money, not the people that have gone on. It's really like my favorite moment when I have a kid like, and I call him kid because he's younger, Matt Roy. There's not one thing that I haven't been part of in his life, whether it was when he got drafted for juniors, graduation from high school, graduation from college, drafted in the NHL, first time he had his NHL debut, right? His wedding, his baby shower, all those things. That's like my favorite moment. And the thing that I look back at, that I'm successful because of those moments, not because of how much money I've ever made from this job.
Yeah, or the Megan Kellers and the
Yes.
Roys of the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And those, but wow, what an incredible experience to be going through what you're going through, like your childhood and
Right.
having your children there,
Right.
and then to be with the Kellers as the U.S. won the gold. And
Yes.
we will have to hold Megan accountable about taking a penalty in overtime. Like we got to keep her. Like we got to make sure she cleaned that up this time for us.
Yes, she did.
So that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that
Oh, you're
story.
so
That's
welcome.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
really, really cool.
Yeah.
So you were recently featured in this documentary. It was an incredible piece. where can people find that? Like, how do they get to work with you more? Like, I think everyone should watch it. So, let's share us how you find that.
You can go to my website, which is kimmuirpowerskating.com, and everything's posted right there with the documentary. I did just a year ago, did a podcast with Jeff Laird. You can see that podcast, as well as all my summer stuff is posted for skating with us here at Suburban Ice Farmington Hills.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I highly recommend everyone watch that documentary. And come work with Kim. If you want to get better at skating, more efficient, more powerful, it's a one-stop shop to be working with Kim Muir. So thanks again for taking the time today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.